Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Island Stat Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Baston. Joining me is co-host Jason Juggling J. Ford. This evening we have as our guest Mr. Macy O'Dill. Gentlemen, this week has been a tough week for the sport of football. Before we get to our topic, it's been a tough week for the sport of football, actually for sport in general, with the loss of young Marco Warren. It's been a very challenging time for many people within the community and even outside the community. And we just want to express our deepest sympathy to his family, friends, and his loved ones, and everyone that Marco had touched. We want to say we offer some condolences and some comfort in this trying time. It's going to be a tough period for quite some time. And I would just say to anyone that needs extra help, reach out for help. Reach out for help. You never know what you can get out of someone just talking to someone. Doesn't have to be someone you know. Just reach out for help. Don't suffer in silence by yourself. And that's the advice I would give anybody that's going through a tough time right now. But tonight's show, where do we get our next national coach from, Jason? I'm gonna start with you, Eddie, because the guy down the bottom had said to me during our football show, it's his job. I don't want to get to that yet. His job.
Welcome to the show, Gracie. Welcome to the show. First of all, good night to everybody. That's the $1 million question, and I think before we start thinking where we should get a coach from, we need to come to reality what we want from a coach. As a country, what we need from a coach, what we want, what we need, and what can we afford as a coach. Because when you start looking at bit by bit, they're going to come with expectations. And whether it's local, whether it's a foreign-based coach, there's come with expectations. Lisa, you've been a coach. Earl, you've been a coach. And I'm pretty sure when you came to an organization who had just fired their coach, they're always looking to do something different or even better. It's the reason why you've gotten the job, right? The reason why they've seeked out your services. But I think we really need to start peeling back what went wrong in the sense of organization-wide or expectations, because I'm seeing the same common things that are probably going back to Barkhad Zeese, maybe, right? And one of the things that's very blaring to me is, I'm always hearing coaches talk about needing extra games, wanting to play. And we've heard the president speak many times how restricted they are, what the cost is bringing teams in. So all these different types of things. So I think as a community, we need to come together what our expectations are, because obviously we should be playing in the World Cup. And we should be Nations Cup at the top tier. It all depends. We're all over the place, right? And I think that's where we need to start first. What do we want from a national coach?
Yeah. So, JC, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? And there's so many puzzle pieces to what this looks like, And first of all, I just want to, I've had direct conversations with Carl Lightbourne. I reached out to him because I think based on what he was given and what he's done, it matches up. Yes, towards when the rebuilding had to happen, I think we fell short in the rebuilding. But in the sort of vast years of his tenure, he took us to the Gold Cup. He excited us. I mean, the players excited us with what they were doing with limited resources. I think we all accept that there is limited resources as it relates to financial resources as it relates to game resources, and it also as it relates to player resources. We have very limited resources. So from that point, the message that I sent to Carl, I said, while I've been a very critic of the type of playing style and the game from my pundit position, I'm very appreciative of the passion, the effort, and the emotional, the financial, the mental sacrifices that he's made, and physical sacrifices that is made to be at that post. So I want that to be clear, out there. And I actually, he's a friend of mine. I had a joke with him. I said, well, maybe now you can come be a pundit. You can sit on the TV like I do and say whatever you feel like it, right? Because that's a stressful position. Let's accept that position as a coach is a stressful position, and it's being done with limited resources, and it's under-resourced. Now, if we use that as our foundation, that we're under-resourced at that, you're right. Well, how do we do it? And I think we're going to continue to be under-resourced as it relates to financial, as it relates to those things, unless the BFA has the ability to tap into the huge funding of FIFA. But I don't know that works like that, that they can tap into it. So let's think of what we could do locally and have a conversation of it. Let's think of, and let's globalize our local resources. So when I say globalize our local resources, we have out there David Bascom, we have out there Sean Gooder, we have out there Connor Smith. Connor Smith has got experience with women football as well as men football, the project. And just so you know, for transparency, I'm spoke to these three figures in some capacity. So Connor Smith and we're good with this conversation. They don't necessarily have to give up their projects, what they're doing, or move to this country to be part of our national program. Because there are international windows that we can align with, and maybe that's the way that we can afford people like that, to change around our dynamics. So they don't, and I'm good with this because it was a conversation in Portugal that Jose Mourinho both coached Portugal and Roma, because of how the dynamics and how the windows operate. So I'm thinking of it as a team of coaches of the resources that we've got. Now, for that to work, we have to have a good local contingent of coaches that are doing scouting on worthy players out here, as well as we now go to people like Cooper, Deshaun Cooper, that's away in England, Corey Hill, that's away in England, Dennis Zool, that's away in England. You have Shannon Birchall, that's away in England. You have all these different people that's in those communities that we can create a scouting network of what our players are doing over there. And then we also have to look at our America piece. We have to properly scout where our players are. So we don't have to test our players in a game like we're always been doing. We've been testing our players in a game. So what the BFA is doing is under 23 team, all right? So the under 23 team that they're sending to the Island Games, they're going to do a 1 week camp in Bournemouth to prepare to go to the Island Games. These are the things that we can figure out how to try to balance financially if we do camps outside of Bermuda for our national teams to prepare for tournaments that they're in. And we participate in all the international windows and sponsorship for the international windows is helped through CONCACAF, is helped through FIFA. So that's the premise of where I'm going over creating a comprehensive coaching network that is inclusive locally of people like myself, people like Richard Todd, people like Dennis Braun, people like Andrew Bascom, that's inclusive, because statistically, people that are representing our country now in football, 85% are overseas between America and England. So that's where I'm going with that. That's the idea that I have of a proper coaching network, because it was too much for Kyle and Ray to pull off by themselves. It's too much for Keeter. You see Keeter, or you see the coaches doubling up. They're going on this trip, that trip, that trip, that trip. That's just too much. And it's overwhelming them. And there's no way that you can get success like that. So that's the idea I have. And yes, logistics have to be worked out for us, financial, for us people's availability. But I know that those three figureheads that were talked about that are been professionals, they're active, that we can work out some logistics with that. That has to be a conversation.
Well, I mean, you just saying that, I'm sitting there thinking, Bermudians are very finicky. If for some reason it doesn't go well, first thing they're going to say is, well, why we have a coach that's not in Bermuda, regardless of who it is.
Yeah, but that's the world.
Bermudians are very critical of when things don't go right.
Yeah, and I get that, but that is the world. The players are now global, right? The players of the world. So if you take Brazil, Brazil's players they're not in Brazil anymore. So the coach, that destination, Germany's players are not in Germany anymore.
Let me just say, let's talk about teams and countries that are parallel to us. We can't keep talking about Portugal and Brazil and let's talk about the Barbados, the Cayman Islands, the Guyanas. Let's talk about them, because that's parallel to what we are. We could talk about Manchester United. We could talk about Manchester City, but we can't. We're different parallels.
But I think our examples have to be somewhere where we want to go, not where people that are on the same.
Or what we want to do is teams that are parallel to us.
So if we talk about those countries, I think they have the same problems, and they need to come up with different solutions. They need to come up with more international solutions. So one problem that we have is money. So do we go to what we tried before to say, well, we get a bucket of money and bring in a foreigner? Do we do that, and then we're starting the dynamics all over, and then we get in the situation? And I know a lot of people call for a foreigner, and I'm not opposed to that. Or do we now say, can we rely on our professionals that are and the word I'm using, maybe they're local foreigners. Builder is a local foreigner, if that's such a word. He's a local foreigner, and he's all Goder, Kano, and David. They're going to see everything with a fresh eye, right? They're not going to see it with a biased eye that I have. I have a biased eye because I know who's down there. Maybe Carl has a biased eye. They're going to see it with a fresh eye. They're going to say, okay, you're recommending this player. Well, I want to see what this guy is. No, he doesn't do that. I want to do that. So, and because now that when we talk about financial situations, and we don't have a whole bag of money, we can now activate people like Goder, David, and Condo's passion for their country, and they can continue along with their project that they're doing. But they need a team. So I know without doubt, a person like Goder, David, Condo, you give them a 2-week training camp, they'll figure out what's what. They'll figure out what's what in that 2 weeks until we go as we go into a tournament, and we do that. That is the solution to the world game now. The world game is a world game. It's not a local game no more. So I don't think our coach. I mean, the cricket's doing it. Cricket actually has a guy that's still doing what he's doing outside of Bermuda. That's coming here at specific times and having specific people to do specific tasks. So when he comes here, he fine tunes it.
Yeah, that weren't good enough. You mean?
Huh?
That weren't good enough to do the job on the end, but they're now being tasked to do the same job.
Well, they're being guided. I think they're being guided by somebody with some type of international exposure and international pedigree that knows what the international world actually looks like. And I think every other country's done it. Every other country is guided themselves by. I mean, I look at a country like Senegal, and I'm going to take the higher road rather than somebody that's paralyzed and have the same problems. So Senegal, for many years, I mean, now they have a local coach that coaches them. They have the guy Cisse. But for many years, they was learning from their European counterparts, and they was learning that information so they can do it themselves. I think we have a David, we have a Kano, we have a Goder that has that information. They're just not going to live here. I know they're not going to live here, and there is opportunities that we can work out logistics with people like that. And what's on the board for them? What's on the board that is tempting for a coach, people like that? The World Cup qualifications are there, and the young players such as Jai Pitt, such as Remy Cottington, such as Deniche Hill, Sincere Hall, those young players are ready and hungry. And I think those figures and Carl, Kano, and those people, they have the information that those young players want. Now, my rule is to do donkey work. Richard Todd's rule, our rules to do some donkey work in keeping what has happened here locally at a standard that they can rely on that. But we already know most of our players in our national teams are gonna come from players that are overseas. That's been proven with the last 3 coaches that were here at that level.
Yeah.
And it's happening with the girl.
Yeah, we're going to take our first commercial break. When we come back, whoever they get ain't got much time because the draw for the Nations League.
It seems everyone knows someone who's lactose intolerant or just avoiding dairy products. Unfortunately, there's a growing array of delicious and nutritious alternatives. Pacific Natural Foods have been doing things their own way simply and sustainably for over a quarter century, making non-dairy beverages with the finest possible ingredients right down to the packaging. Try Pacific Natural Original and Vanilla Hemp Milk and Almond Original Plant-Based Beverage, all sweetened or unsweetened, and low-sodium organic vegetable or chicken broth. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends, and that's what I'm thankful for.
Putting down the weapons.
You seen this?
And welcome back. I'm having trouble with my internet. I don't know about anybody else, but yeah. CONCACAF yesterday conducted the official draw for the third edition of the CONCACAF Nations League. As we know, Bermuda are in League B, and the first lot of matches will take place September, October, November of 2023. For League A, the new quarterfinals will be played in November of 2023. So Bermuda is, and they were drawn in Group C with French Guiana, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Belize. So, and these are home and away leagues. So there's a lot of football to be played in a very short space of time. Jason, let me ask you.
Yeah.
How much time would a new coach need, whether it be local or foreign, to assemble a squad, have a plan of how they want to address it?
Yeah, how the world game is going now, you don't have time, right? Time is not your friend. So
hold on, Messiah.
Do you not hear me?
I hear you.
I hear you, Earl.
Yeah, Jay.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, that's the one. Yes, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Messiah.
So okay, we're going away. We know that we're gonna go to the Island Games in July. I would hope that they're having conversations of who is going to be the next coach, and that coach is being made aware or even assessing that under 23 group that they're taking over to the Island Games. So they got an exciting under 23 group that they got in training, that has the whole brothers that are local players here, that has Jai Pitt, and it's not an under 23 tournament, but they're making a smart decision and taking an under 23 over there. So imagine the concept that I just proposed if a David Godin-Cano was over there watching that tournament and assessing where we are. And then you got quite capable, that's local, John Barry Newsom is taking that group along with Sergio. These are capable people. These are very capable people. So we have to the point that we have to glue the whole network together. But I still think we need coaches that have international pedigree and are operating in an international environment. And if it's not a foreigner, then our local coaches that are doing that. So like I said, I think if they saw those players, and then it's probably going to be 10 to 15 players outside of those players that are still there. You know, maybe you tempt. And do you tempt? Here's the question. With a Goda that comes around, or losing your, okay, if a Goda that comes around, a Kano that comes around, you know, I know the finicky are players. Do you tempt a Nathan Trott back into the scene? Do you tempt, you know, we got the guy on Parford that's still out there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
do you even tempt a Niku Vowles to lead a new fresh group into another campaign? With that information and those type of coaches, for, you know, is the temptation for players, because I know what players want. Players want information. They want from a coach. They want information, and that can change around very quickly. And players are the finicky ones, but they're the main resources. So they're the ones that we're gonna cater to. That's just how the game goes. They're the main resources, and if they're lost away with a particular coach, then, you know, we need to tempt them into performing with the right energy around them and the right information around them. And I personally think that somebody watching the Island Games, they'll see that group of 25 players, and then, you know, what you need afterwards is a 2-week training camp to really hone in on your details. Because we're not got bad players, We're not got bad players. We just have to put the tactical. We have to put the whole puzzle together. Yeah.
So Jay, what's your thoughts?
So, Mace, I've got two lines of thoughts. So what you propose, it obviously anybody with a football brain can't argue with it, right? But for me, it's a very ideal situation, and I say that to say we keep going back to that word, the finances. So let's stick with the coach's side of what you had mentioned. Instead of basically a very small coaching backroom staff, you're actually looking now to expand on that. Maybe add 3 to 5, whether you want to call them consultants, whether you want to call them backroom staff. That's all going to be salaries, right? The other thing that's an extra salary that, once again, lack of resources. We still ain't talked about how we're going to actually go out and get where the money's coming from, especially still coming from COVID. A lot of companies have not recovered as far as putting out money. We know that, right? Sponsorship. The other thing is that, and I think we've been down this road before, when we've getting we're trying to pull all our great minds together, right? Or our great football minds together. But what style do we play? Because as we know, most of our great minds have a different
very.
And before you go, and there are going to be players within that setup that have allegiance to those coaches because they probably came up through those coaches.
Yeah.
Right? And we saw that happen a lot of times, because then if that coach for some reason happens to pull out, what normally happens to those players? They normally follow.
So it's two ways of answering that, Jace. The here and now way and the future way. So Carl Lightbourne spoke of having to convince the players to play in a certain way. And they brought in technology to convince the players to play in a way. But that takes time. So the immediate thing is that those minds that they were professional enough between them that they can figure out what's the best way of doing things as the players that they got available for them. So they're professional enough between them to do that. And whoever the head coach is, and along with Maurice and whatever, those conversations are here as to best way of doing things. Now, long term, the only way we can get a clear playing style if we do what we're supposed to do better domestically. And we build them domestically, but that's a long-term project. That is a long-term project and I always go back to the conversation that I had with Goder and Kyle Lightbourne when they asked me to be part of the coaching staff at the Hawks, and I said no. I said, because if the Hawks are going to survive, you need to go and find every woman that is pregnant with a male baby and start from there. And I wasn't joking about that. You have to start from developing that kid to play at this level from there. Because although you can get our best local players, they are not been developed to handle travel, playing, being paid. They're not developed to handle that. So the Hawks lost a lot of money, a lot of time, and it obviously collapsed. So the answer to your question is twofold. The coaches that are there, just like any international coach, they need to come in based on the resources that they have available for and develop what is the best style and the best way of getting results. And in that group that we just talked about, I think we all figured we could get results out of that group, the group that starts in September. I think as a country, we're capable of getting the results out of that group with the players that we got through and developing what the way we're going to play. And that's a conversation with the minds that are there, that are in that room. And the long-term solution is that we've got to fix the domestic game. And that's happening as we speak. It's a work in progress. Earl, you would know the BFA and all the other sporting bodies are involved in developing long-term athletic development programs. And that's going to encompass how we do this. Like, we can't just keep doing it based on every new person that comes in. We have to have an established way of doing sports in Bermuda. We have to have an established way of doing football and know where we're measuring it from. Not measure it from if Macy is in there, if Jason's in there, if Earl's in there, measuring from what we're doing as Bermudians, what is culture. So that's a bigger conversation, Jace. But you're right. You're right in asking that question.
Yeah, it just, like I said, I mean, we have a lot of ideal things what we would love to have, and I mean, basically, I know I keep going back at it, but when you hear the budgets come out yearly, and you're in the ministry, you see the trend, right? You see the trend. So it's not like there's a money tree that's around the corner that okay, we're on a World Cup campaign and this money tree is going to appear, right? The reality is right now there's no money tree, and we got to try to make do with what we've got, and that's where I feel that that's our biggest challenge. Because let's go back a bit. Let's go back to when Kyle first started, right? Right? And I think Earl will remember, because I know I went around there a couple of times when they first started. They first started having training sessions around at BAA Field. And they were having trouble to get 6 guys.
Yeah.
Trouble.
Yeah.
Players did not want to make themselves available at all for the national program. Right? Let's fast forward to now. Let's think of what's happening, not only in the game, but in the world, where the technology has really came and took a part of a lot of sports, right? Even social media side, trying to do. Now, think about it. We barely was getting 6 players. We probably only had about maybe 3 overseas based. We're looking at maybe a pool of what, 15 to 20
overseas based players.
Yeah. So the dynamics have changed, and like I said, I love the like I said, you want to call them scouts, whatever names you want to give them. Is that expectations back here locally? Because and Earl had mentioned earlier, what the barbershop again say? Why are we paying all these consultants? Especially, and it's not when we're winning, those questions never come up when we're winning. When we're winning, all the money that we're paying is worth it, right?
I agree.
When we have, and unfortunately, it could be. Let's go back. Let's revisit history. It could be a tournament over COVID, where we can't get players to travel because of whatever restrictions we have. So we can't put out our best teams. We get the bad results, and then we start asking these questions. So I'm just thinking, instead of us repeating history, how do we learn from history going forward, and how can we fix some of these problems that not just Kyle had, but the last few coaches had?
The answer to that is that the nature of the beast is that until we do something that makes our country proud, they have the right to criticize us. Until they have the right. I mean, we can speak of Arsenal, right? They'll Kroenke out, this guy out. All of a sudden they start winning. Arteta's the best coach. Arteta's this. But he went through that time, that testing period, right? So that testing period is part of it, right? And we know the criticism will come at the barbershop, and quite rightly, I think it should go. I don't think the public should have trust just yet. So the public shouldn't have trust in what happens at that level. They shouldn't have trust. And these coaches are going to have to, and any coach that they choose to pick is got to go through that process of building trust and respect. So that's going to be part of it. And when we speak of the money tree, that's why we have to be very manipulative and very resourceful with the money. When I was up in National Academy, I think my contract was like $250 a month. $250 a month. And if you look at the work that was being done, but people like myself or like a Dennis or like that is a lot of labor first for us. And the coaches that are up there is still a lot of labor. I know Carl was not being paid anywhere where he's worth. There was a conversation, let's be honest, there was a conversation when they tried to get Goda that the fee that he wanted, they couldn't match that. They couldn't match that, and this is why I speak of it's a different time now. Goder, Kano, and David, they're in different positions financially of what they're doing outside of Bermuda. So now it could become a lot of labor for them, potentially a lot of labor as to what's on the board for us. Potential World Cup qualifying and young players that are in professional environments. And maybe just for once, the stars can align for us. Maybe once we can dream and the stars can align because if we get it, it's not really far-fetched that the players that were got out there, that we can qualify for the next World Cup. That is really possible. Now, how we're doing things right now, I would say no. So the real decision is who we get to put in charge. That's the real decision. Who do we put in charge? And
who does Maceo think?
Huh?
Who does Maceo think?
Who do we put in charge?
Yeah, who does Maceo think? Because
I think it's Sean Goder for me. I think Sean Goder, but I also
you just mentioned he won't be based here, right? You mentioned that.
No,
earlier.
he won't be based here. But he can probably see more players in England than he sees here that are not in England. I think it's Sean Goder, and Sean Goder picks a staff that he can feel support him.
Who will be the main coach locally?
I would think in local, I don't think we need a main coach locally, or it would be a John Barry that maybe the head figure locally, because right now our players were not able to select a lot of players locally. I mean, if you look at the last team, we had 4 local players. Mm-hmm. So it's not a lot. We're not picking a lot of players locally, but we have to do a better job in getting local players up to a standard, which is difficult because they're not playing up to a standard. They're not playing up locally. They're not playing up to an international standard. So it's very difficult to get new local players up to a standard. Now, people like Lejean Simmons, Alili, he at least when he got up to the international standard, remember he was at Elkerson. So when he came back, at least he had the standard. At least he was very useful. So if we go down the line, so Corey Robinson, one of our top local players, but he wasn't up to the standard internationally. He was brave enough, but he wasn't up to the standard. You had Jalen Baffert that as a defender, his heart, he keeps himself fit, he keeps himself in order. Okay, he balanced off at the standard. But we had a lot of errors that let him go when we was in games. So we don't have a lot of local players that are yet up to the standard. So the figurehead locally could be a John Barry.
Yeah. But wouldn't you agree we would need to keep the locals interested in the event?
We have to figure that out. Because I think the Hall brothers could be up to they're up to international awareness. So they're up to international awareness because they spent a lot of time in the international steam in their young days, so they know what that looks like. They're not going to be up to the international fitness, but we can correct that, isn't it? We can correct fitness. We can crack fitness if we have a program here that takes advantage and that makes them fit, but they still have to have games that are playing at that level. They have to have games that are playing at that level. So it is something we have to glue together, to keep the locals interested. And again, the conversation is about what we do now to get out of the Nations League or to potentially qualify to the World Cup versus what we do long term to improve ourselves locally. So it's a tricky little balance, right?
What would you consider the expectations are for the under-23s in this island games that they're attending?
They should win the island games. With the players that I see that got available and the other countries that they're playing for, they should win it. And you remember the last time we was in the island games when we hosted in Bermuda, both the male and the female won it. Remember that?
Yeah.
But we didn't enter it in. We didn't go from strength to strength with that. So the players that I got going to these Island Games, they should win it. They should win the Island Games.
What happens if they don't?
Yeah, same thing that's always happened. Well, that will fail again. Will fail again. The same thing. I personally think the mentality of going to the Island Games, the small Island Games, like we should medal in a lot of different areas, not just in football, but we should also medal in a lot of different areas. You know, we should be capable of medal in a
Is a silver a failure?
What's that?
Is a silver and/or a bronze a failure?
No, we should medal. I think that's that's fine. You're talking about football or sports? Football is a silver or bronze for football a failure? Yes.
Yeah.
We should beat the Island Games. Our players that they're taking, and I'm quietly excited because I know of the players that they're selecting. You know, they're selecting everything that's young and available. Like this is the first time I did it. Like if we go back to the cricket going to the World Cup, we didn't select all our young players. We selected all our players that was the last array. Mm-hmm. And I look at Bangladesh that selected all the young players, took licks, but now they're the test nation.
Do you know why they picked the older ones and not the younger ones?
In Bermuda?
Yeah.
Because the older ones got them there, and maybe the younger they didn't have confidence that the younger ones could make an impression. I don't know.
No, because many people fail to remember. Let's hope this comes back. Many people fail to remember that Bermuda played.
You're going out. Well, Jay, even the younger ones in Bangladesh, right? You had at that time. You had Jakan Edmis. You had Stephen Douglas that didn't get selected. You had those players that the cricket board was sending away to programs.
So this is. I'm gonna go back to that. You know, go ahead, Errol, while you're here.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so a lot of people fail to remember that Bermuda played in 2 World Cups. Remember, the under-19 played in the World Cup.
Right.
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 At the same time. So the guys you were, with the exception of Jakan, the guys you just mentioned, went to the under-19 World Cup.
Was at the exact same time?
It wasn't the exact same time. It was around the same time.
So for me, come from the under-19 World Cup and go to the Senior World Cup. And I would, no disrespect to Hogwood Clay, I'm not taking you on your one knee. I'm not taking you on your one knee, man. No disrespect to that, because those guys are stewards of the game. But at some point, we had to make a sacrifice so our young kids come through. I always have this conversation at North Village as it relates to my good friend Kevin Brand and Elliot Jennings, that they stayed around too long. I had to come and retire them when I have coached because I had to let the new generation come through. And that's just a world thing. Barcelona let Messi stay around too long. Look what United tried to bring Cristiano Ronaldo back too long. The young people have to come through. We have to create the pathways so they can come through and gain this momentous experience. We have to create, but we have to balance it. And that's why when I talk about the national team, can we tempt Nakeem House back around? Can we tempt somebody like that back around with young professionals?
I'm glad you brought that up again, because Maceo, I think, and I said earlier, that's another elephant in the room that we tend to leave out of these conversations. That we're a commitment. Mm-hmm. Korea over a country.
Yeah.
Where these foreign-based players have to make a hard decision, where they might be fighting for a spot for the career.
Yeah.
And we're asking them be committed to our national program which can, number one, they can either get injured and lose the job, or take them out of form or not be playing. That's twofold, right? We've seen it. We've seen it even help them, right? Come home,
Yeah, that's twofold.
and go to the squad, and then get picked up or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once again, we can go back to previous administrations. That most of the time, we're trying to get our best players, and we can't get the commitment from our best players. And I'm not just using one coach. We can go back, and this is not just football, but also cricket.
Cricket, yeah.
How can we? What is the incentive? Because you're asking someone once again, Korea national program.
I know without a doubt, people want to play for their country, in front of their country. They want their friends. That's a big thing over any money, any stuff. But I know if we're talking specifically about the key rounds, or they have to make business decisions at some point in their life. They have to make business decisions, because when the king looks at his wife, his wife's not going to say, well, you scored 100 goals for Bermuda. When he looks at his children, they're not going to say you scored 100 goals. So that's always a tricky balance. And even when he looks at his body is going to say, well, you keep doing that, you see what happens. But you can see what is done with his statement. He's left his door open. This is not saying I'm retired. I'm stepping back for a moment. But I guarantee you, if there's a momentum and there's a positive boss moving, he's going to move with that boss. And that positive boss might look at who's the coach, what are we doing, what are we doing, So for players like Naki and those international players, it's difficult because it comes with some sacrifice, and they can get criticized both ways. They can get criticized if they don't participate, and they can get criticized if they participate and don't perform. So they're putting themselves at risk all the time. And all the time they're putting themselves at risk. And that's nothing new. That's nothing new in the international scene. Look at Harry Maguire. England love him. He goes to United, they hate him. It's nothing new. So players could gel in different scenarios based on different circumstances, right?
You mentioned Harry Maguire, but I'm going to bring it back locally, right? And I'm going to say this because we do this all this time, and we have our any success with our national team, right? We're quick to go out on a parade. Quick. As soon as they land, we'll give them a ride baton. Right?
It's a problem for me, Jace.
Soon as they lose, like we want to tear the whole team apart. And we're going back to commitment when we have these guys who are giving the whole. And as soon as something goes wrong, they're getting blasted out of the water. Locally, some of these guys, Maceo, I know you know this, Maceo, some of these guys cannot take that heat.
Yeah.
Trip after trip. Some say, you know what? I'm gonna hold out this one here.
Well, and that's why a lot of local people are not participating. Yeah. A lot of local people are just not mentally and emotionally prepared.
But that's what
they're not mentally and emotionally prepared to participate. They're just not. And they opt out. And if they opt out, it's not a lot we can do about that. And that again is part of the long-term conversation. What are we gonna do better from when they're 5 years old? That they do, like Jace, for me, we have this thing that everybody's a winner, everybody gets a petition. That's not how Jace.
That's not how we came up.
That's not how I operate, man. That's not. Not everybody can win.
I totally agree with you on there, Bill.
Not everybody can win, and not everybody gets a medal, man. Somebody might have to cry, man. Somebody might have to cry, and somehow what changed that we think everybody was soft in ourselves. So that's just another conversation about how we're soft in ourselves, right? I had a conversation with Dennis just yesterday, and Dennis has got overseas contact, and the overseas contact has what you call an independent academy, and he is preparing the players mentally and emotionally for the tough love. like the tough love. And Earl, you see what done with the show, right? I was down PAC last night in Marco, and the PAC guys were like, yeah, man, all that stuff you guys were talking on that show, yeah. And it made them respond in positive ways. And I can respect that. I can respect that they got criticism, that those things there, and they responded. So I'm with you, Jace, that not everybody's a winner yet. Man. You want to win? There's certain things you got to do to win, Jace.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's where we are now as a country, and this is where the reality is. What are we ranked? 100 and what in the world?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. And it's the only way that happens. The only way we improve on that is what we have to play more games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that right there. No, and I say this because let's go to the bigger picture, right? We're looking at talking about, let's say for the sake of argument, to help out our finances, corporate sponsorship, right?
Yeah.
But what do corporate sponsors want? What do sponsors want? Sponsors want exposure. Sponsors want to see somebody, constantly, right? Yeah. So these are the things that could probably lead us to some corporate sponsors.
Corporate sponsors.
Yeah. But we still have to get over the how to actually.
Well, Jason, let's politicalize the conversation. You put Goder, Carl, and Connell out there, professionals. What happens with the corporate world? What happens with the corporate world? What happens with the corporate world? And I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you something factual with North Village. Goder's coaching North Village, right? Mm-hmm. He's coaching North Village, and North Village was struggling to find the funds to have an AGM. And because to have an AGM, we have to have, our Constitution says that we have to have an audit.
Audit, yep.
So we have Graham Puter, whose son's in our, Graham Puter, the CEO of Catlin at the time, that's in our organization, said, well, listen, you guys are doing such a good job in your coaching. I can help with this here. The corporate sponsor, I can help with this. The next conversation he has with us says, listen, I have a colleague that's coming down from Manchester, and he's in love with Sean Goder. He wants a picture for his grandchild, and he wants this, and he can underwrite, for that, he can underwrite your youth program for you. So I say that figures Goder, let me tell you, Goder right now is going to the under 19 World Cup for FIFA. FIFA's employing him to go to the under 19 World Cup to be an analysis. We know what David is. We know what Connor is just heading up, or his building a whole program. And these are our own people. These are Bermudians. And we have to at least have the conversation. We have to at least have these people refuse us.
So, like I said, I do not oppose to the names you're calling and what we're trying to do. I think the bigger conversation would be what the role from the BFA, as Maurice Lowe as the director. I think what position are we in? Realistic position are we in? Can we afford all this stuff? And how do we go about it? Because, we can all come with our different pie in the sky ideas. At the end of the day, who's pulling those strings and who's making that all happen together? And like I said, you mentioned it good. I understand our best resources are our people. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. But I keep coming back to the position that BFA is in, the position BFA has been in. And if we're looking at trends, as far as financially, we're not going in a good direction. So how do we navigate? I'm pretty sure we've spoke to President Wade many times, just in navigating through the COVID, right? And we had to, like I said, we had to have a network to pull these different resources in to make it happen. Yeah, I do see that happening. That has to happen. My thing is, we need to see how the administration, how are they looking to network and make it all make sense.
And to do that, I think is inclusiveness in our resources, and taking instructions from our resources that are out there, and the resources Is it Jason? Is it Maceo? Is it Dennis Braun? Is it Sean Goda? Is it, is being inclusive with that and taking leadership to glue those resources together. So that's the BFA's role is taking leadership to be open to engage our resources, and also to take leadership to glue the resources together. And it's not the money pieces. We're not going to solve it because we're not got the money, but it's not for new. And I learned because I've been open. So I learned, Derek Broadley. You remember when Derek Broadley was here? That was the last one. Now, Derek Broadley came to Bermuda that didn't have a lot of financial resources. Yes, they paid his wage, but outside that, they didn't have a lot of financial resources for programming and stuff. But you know what Derek Broadley had? He just left Crystal Palace that was in administration that didn't have the same thing. They didn't have the same thing, so he learned how to work and be creative in building something of that's sustainable without financial resources. And only when you build something is when people's gonna come. It's like say build it and they'll come. Mm-hmm. People's not gonna, generally speaking, the people's not gonna jump on at the beginning and say, well, here's $80 million to go ahead and do that. They're gonna jump on when the train's moving in a good direction. And there is some leg work for the train to move in direction that the BFA have to do and that we have to do to move the train in a good direction. So
yeah. Well, we await, I guess, whenever the Bermuda Football Association decide who that next person will be to lead the national team, the men's senior national team. We know this summer is very busy with the National Academy teams set to compete, and then, of course, the men's national team in September. So once we do get an announcement from the Bermuda Football Association, maybe we need to revisit the conversation as to see what direction this person or persons will take the national team in.
Yeah, maybe these type of shows and these type of public forums having the discussion push the agenda, right? Influences the agenda. I mean, it's their decision to make, as it always is.
Have you applied?
I didn't know it was an application out. Is an application out?
You didn't inquire?
Huh?
You didn't inquire?
Yeah. Well, I haven't, but I will.
Remember, I'm already going by what you said. The only job for you is the men's singing that. The job's available now.
Oh, you're talking about the national coach job?
Yes.
Okay. So just so I can speak to that, if I'm speaking to me, I would like to work in the National Academy at the national program, a national job. I'm equipped with is the knowledge of all players from maybe 12 years old to 35 years old. I'm equipped with all those players from my years of working in the youth in Bermuda. So whether they're going away or whether they're here, and sometimes they came through that pathway, and I'm equipped with that. So my skill set to the national program would be in some assistant position. I still think they need something more than what I have. They need something for Bermuda. They need something that's of international pedigree and that's up with international trends. And my role becomes I assist in it, or I do one of the youth teams at that level. So what you'll get out of me, if you put me in that position, I'll have to go through the same learning curve to get us up to that speed. To get us up to that speed, I'll have to go through the same learning curve.
Hey, Mace, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I think, and I know you like to bring up a lot of the overseas teams. What if we seek out a coach, a foreign-based coach, who wants to bring in his own staff?
Yeah. Well, I don't think
that's reality. Most of the times, they bring their own staff to people who they trust, right?
Yeah. I don't think we can afford it for one. You know, I don't know that we can afford it or got money to be able to do that. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. I wouldn't be. I'm speaking in the limitations that I think we've got financially. So I'm speaking. I'm got creative with what we have locally, but ultimately, maybe the ultimate solution, and I'm not afraid to speak of it, is a foreign coach or foreign continues to come in and build us and us to learn over it.
That's why I asked you. I was to see.
Yeah, I'm not afraid that I'm not afraid of that conversation as a foreign coach coming to Bermuda. I looked at broadly when he came and what he opened my mind to. What he opened my mind to, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't think of that. I didn't consider that. Now I already know that somebody that's in the international team in the international level, what they got available to them that they're learning. So if I'm learning as a coach from 20 games a year, they're learning from 100 games a year. That's just more learning, isn't it? Just statistically, they're being exposed. And in Bermuda, I'm learning from this small pool of players. They're learning from players that are all over the world. You know, psychological pieces, behavior pieces, training pieces, you know, nutritional pieces. It's all those pieces. Yes, I can talk about I know about football, but it's all those other pieces that are relevant. That I know that a David's they're experiencing that regularly. Or Sean Gooder is experiencing that regularly. You know, a Kano is experiencing that regularly. That I'm not experiencing here. You know, I'm experiencing coaching Kofi and Jamaica that are my brothers and cousins. I know everything about their behaviors, right? So that's just why I'm trying to globalize the conversation. But I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to. I mean, look at what field hockey is doing. Field hockey has brought in the guy from South Africa, Kavan, and it's changing the dynamics of those girls. And first, it was difficult for them to take on those concepts. Now they took on concepts. They're starting to believe they've qualified for the CAC games, and it's going to take them to the CAC games. Yeah, but they won a tournament here. The facts lend to that. The facts lend to every time Bermuda's done really the best that Bermuda football has done. If you go back to Alan Smith, way back when Uncle Punchy was playing, I think his name Alan, it's been on a foreign coach. That's factual. Cricket, was it not a foreign coach?
Like I said, my thing is so many different dynamics that our players are not where they are now, and it's hard. I see the trouble with challenges with commitment when it comes to coaches. I see it, and whether it's style, whether it's fitness, you mentioned it, whether it's putting nutrition, whether it's off the field stuff, right? Because we've seen that hamper some of our best players, just off the field, whether it be social media, different things off the field that's hampered them being in the squad. All these different things that is you mentioned it early. It was hard for Kyle or Ray or even the coaching staff to try to do all of that. So I'm with you with this team of great minds. My thing is, how do you make that work to keep them financially happy? Because, as you know, if they're in this, and you've been a great spokesman tonight for Gooder and Connor, those guys, right? I know you've been a great spokesman for them, especially David. But no, David, like I know David, David's got his hat in many fires. Where is he finding that time?
Yeah.
Where is he finding that time?
And it's logistical. I'm speaking very ideal. Is the logistics of that is logistical. It is. I mean, like I said, I did have a conversation directly with Connor and how he thinks about stuff. And the project he is. I have regular conversations with Gooder as how he thinks about stuff. So planning has to be now.
Yeah.
Planning, if that is a consideration, if those minds are a consideration, I think we just at least have to have a conversation with them.
Well, we need matches now because what got games in September.
And the matches are gonna come. Like the Nations League is gonna provide us that match. Is gonna provide us matches. And I would, yeah. And I think those guys, let's say they had to break away in the international window. Now, unfortunately, in America, the international, that league, I don't know if the international window lines up with how the European international lines up. I don't know if it's global. So maybe, do they have to break away for 2 weeks when we're playing a home and away game? Yeah. So it's just having a conversation and to see if the logistics work out.
Well, one thing for sure, we'll pick this conversation back up once we know who the next coach is. To see what direction the national team will go. Do we follow suit in the domestic? It's a lot of questions. And the good thing is the season's due to start in September. So is international competition.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen.
I don't think we're solved here, you guys.
I don't think this is off season anymore, is it?
Yo, this is what I'm saying. We can't have all season anymore, man. All right, man.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. So we'll thank you very much for joining this edition of the IronStats.com Sports Show. Enjoy your night.